Are you recording? Okay, good. Yeah, and as you go along, if you have questions, you can speak up in Zoom or you can post them in Slack, and I'll check a couple times to see if there have been any comments or questions in the Slack channel. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. So to start, I'll go ahead and read the problem, and then we'll write out a solution in plain English, just some instructions for what we're going to do, and then I'll code it out and talk about what I'm writing. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions, or if you want to share your own code or just talk about your thought process if you're not quite done. Okay, so let's get started. The problem, longest string, asked us to write a function that accepts an array of strings and return the longest string in the array. All right, so how can we do that? We can either use a for loop or for each. Iterate over the array of strings. We're going to want to compare the string lengths to each other to find the longest one and return the longest one. The way that I chose to compare the strings to each other, oops, that actually goes up here, was by starting with an empty string. And then comparing each string to the empty string that I've called longest. And if it's longer, reassigning the longest string to longest, if that makes sense. Something in Slack. Nope. Okay. I'm going to start coding it out now. I'll start with just our frame. And our function accepts an array. We'll call it R. We'll create that empty string first. Sometimes you can declare a variable without giving it a value first. Like you could do something like this. But because we're going to need to access the length of it as we compare our strings to it, we have to make it an empty string so that it will have a length of 0. So next we'll do our for each. We'll say for each string, do something. For each string, we wanted to compare the length of the string to the value that's been assigned to longest. And then once we've done that and we've gone through all the strings, we'll return longest. Make some strings so that we can test it. And we get A, B, C, D. So what's happening here is we're giving longest string our strings array with these 3 strings inside. We're starting with our empty string. And the first string we're going to compare is A. Because the length of A is longer than 0, then longest gets A. Then we move on to A, B, C, D. We compare the length of A, B, C, D to the length of A, and it's longer. so it gets A, B, C, D. And then we do the same thing with A, B, C, but because it's shorter, we don't reassign it. And then we return the longest, which was A, B, C, D. Does anybody have any questions?
I think one person was asking what this would look like if we did it without using the for each method and used a native for loop. So maybe if you feel like that's something you want to try and go for, that'd be cool too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the difference between for each and the for loop. Yeah, readability. I personally think it's easier to write too. They're not exactly interchangeable. There are some differences. Like if you want to break out of a loop before you say get to the end of the array you're iterating over, you couldn't do that with for each. For each will go all the way through to the end. So you would have to use a for loop for that. But I can do this with this, since we're going through everything. We could do this with a for loop too. Like that. Okay. I posted a message in the Slack with a green check and a red X. So if everything's making sense and you feel good about it, hit the green check. But if you have questions, hit the X. It looks pretty good. It looks like everybody is getting it. Does anybody want to share their solution? Did anyone get something different? Oh, sorry, we do have a question. So if you hit the red X, could you try and turn it into a question? Maybe later. Okay. Does anybody want to share their code?
So yeah, normally at this point in the code challenge solution, if you guys come up with something different than what's being presented, it really kind of helps drive a conversation. So if you had anything you wanted to share, that's cool. Otherwise, that's it's cool to just move forward as well. So most people, it looks like everything is pretty identical here. Okay. Yep.
Yep. And if you come up with questions later, you can always reach out in the Slack, or you can talk about your code in the Slack too.
Yeah, if you guys used a sort method, post your solution in Slack. That'll be fun to look at as well. Kind of getting a community of like a bunch of these things, built into your arsenal, and understanding how these algorithms work will be really, really helpful to you as you continue to go into the job force and look at doing code challenge solutions for companies looking to hire you. So we're going to start with these pretty, more straightforward kind of string operation comparison algorithms for the next couple of days maybe. And then next week, as we start into more advanced JavaScript topics and start delivering content around like data structures and some more computer science fundamentals, you'll get into a lot heavier algorithms that really push you to know the ins and outs of the JavaScript language. So right away, we're gonna make these code challenges build one-on-one on top of each other. So All right. Does anyone have any other questions or at all? Okay, I'm going to stop recording.